Hello. I'm coming back to you again. I'm really gonna give it my all, man. I'm gonna stay consistent. I want to just jump right into it because it's almost 10 o'clock. Baby girl is down for the count, but she likes to sleep in the bed with me, so I already know how this goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove these couple pages that's broken off if you've been subscribed. But today we're going to be reading chapter 10 in the Edgar Cayce Guide to Self-Healing, okay? So let me go ahead and put that on the side right there. And then in the process, my back page has come off. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay. Chapter 10, the seat of power and self-healing. In this chapter, we want to get to the root of Edgar Cayce's incredible healing talent. What power did he have? Where did that power reside in him? We already know of the incredible healing power Cayce possessed. We know that his knowledge of the body, mind, and spirit of man is literally awesome. What we would like to know now is what was the source of the information given in the Cayce readings. And once we learn that, we want to explore the path of meditation, which in Cayce's teaching is the direct route to healing power. We are told that the information as given or obtained from Edgar Cayce has a remarkable source. And Cayce himself tells us this: the information as given or obtained from this body, Edgar Cayce, is gathered from the sources from which the suggestion that given verbally to Mr. Cayce by the conductor of the reading at its beginning may derive its information. In this state, the unconscious state in which the readings were given, the conscious mind becomes subjugated to the subconscious, superconscious, or soul mind, and may and does communicate with like minds, and the subconscious or soul force becomes universal. From any subconscious mind, information may be obtained, either from this plane or from the impressions as left by the individuals that have gone on before. As we see a mirror reflecting direct that which is before it, it is not the object itself, but that reflected as in this. The suggestion that reaches through to the subconscious or soul in this state gathers information from that as reflected from what has been or is called real or material. Through the forces of the soul, through the minds of others as presented or that have gone on before, through the subjugation of the physical forces in this manner, the body, Edgar Cayce, obtains the information. When someone asked Cayce while he was in a trance at another instance where he was getting his information, he gave two sources that his mind was apparently effective in tapping. One was the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind of the subject himself. The other was what was called the universal memory of nature, or what Jung called the collective unconscious, or others the Akashic records. This latter is the recording angel, or what Christians refer to as the book of life. We see that the source of Cayce's knowledge was a kind of universal storehouse of all knowledge. Cayce was incredible. He could answer questions pertaining to the creation of man, universal law, all physical laws in the earth. He could solve the most difficult health problems confronting his era. And through it all, he never lost a human touch and distinct patience. He would show equal concern for a simple disorder such as a wart as he would for a fatal disease. That is why his statements took on such a dimension of credibility. What are some of the characteristics we know about the subconscious or unconscious mind? For it is obvious that in his healing process, Cayce manifested a contact between his subconscious and that of the patients. It was mind meeting mind. The self-healer must be alert to this reality, for we are in Cayce's school now, and in order to effectively emulate the master, we must learn as much as we can about his concept of the subconscious or unconscious mind. It is our path to effective self-healing. We know that the subconscious mind is fed by the conscious mind, and we have already seen that the conscious mind derives its perceptions from the five senses: visual, sight, smell, hearing, and taste. If we recall the brief treatment of the subconscious given in a previous chapter, we know that it never forgets. It can receive messages that are so rapid they escape the attention of the conscious mind. In past years, subliminal advertising attempted to cash in on this innate ability of the subconscious mind. We also know from the great interest that hypnosis creates today in professional and lay circles that a hypnotist can tell a person under hypnosis that he is burning him with a poker, and the subject will react by forming a blister in the very spot indicated. What the self-healer must attend to is that it is already a known fact that the subconscious mind exercises an an amazing influence over the body. There are some people who, when put under hypnosis, can reach incredible depths of sleep. We all know about the marvels of, oh, never seen this word before, somnambulism. Somnambulism? SOM as in Mary, N as in Nancy, A, B as in boy, ULISM as in Mary. We know a lot already about the unconscious or subconscious mind, but there's still a lot more to learn about it. We are only now discovering the reality of the interplay between the hemispheres of the brain and what the left side does of itself and the right side of itself. A whole new world of knowledge and information derives just from acceptance of the dual hemisphere interrelationships. We don't know as yet just how deep the subconscious goes, and we are not sure yet how it all works. Up until now, most of what we know about the subconscious comes to us from studies and research done through hypnosis. But now we have meditation and other trance-induced states that are yielding quite a bit of scientific insights. For many people, the subconscious mind is a dark, mysterious place that they'd rather not think about, or it is an area that others discuss, but they seldom admit to having. Years and years passed before man finally became aware of the fact that he did possess a subconscious mind, and one that is obviously operated on several different levels. But it was only recently that the individual accepted the findings of science on the subconscious mind and gave himself permission to investigate and analyze its workings. Edgar Cayce used his subconscious mind to great advantage, and he evidently had the ability to contact the subconscious mind of another and tap it. The information he discovered there was not anything he created or fabricated. Experience has so often demonstrated that he was usually right on target as to the physical, mental, and spiritual condition of the person whose mind he contacted. We who wish to be self-healers then ought to realize the immense power that the subconscious mind represents, not only in terms of ourselves, but in the potential we have to reach other people. That is why this chapter is so important to the self-healer. With proper understanding, the self-healer can also can achieve with his subconscious mind what Cayce did. We must remember that although Cayce himself never said he was a great prophet or claimed to be as powerful as Jesus or Muhammad and the others, he did in fact have incredible healing powers. His subconscious mind could transcend time and space, so for us, his disciples, we can capitalize on his teachings and his ability to journey beyond the five senses into the realm of time and space. We need not only transcend it, but even literally penetrate it. Modern psychiatry holds that the subconscious mind retains its past experiences. It also teaches us that it would be sensitive to the malfunctions of its own physical body when sickness strikes that body. But Cayce goes even further. It is important to realize that for him, the subconscious is really working with the soul mind or superconscious and whatever needs to be accomplished for the good of the entity. Sorry, just trying to see if it's still recording. We ought not to think of the subconscious as an inferior state of mind, even though it is classified by Cayce as a habit. This is understandable since the subconscious contains a record of the experiences of the entity. The subconscious mind is both consciousness and thought or spirit consciousness, hence may be best classified in the physical sense as a habit. We all then use our subconscious to some degree when we adhere to the invitation of suggestion, and we all know how frequently we are subject to suggestion through radio, TV, and our daily readings. Although the subconscious mind is sensitive to suggestion, again, this does not imply an imperative, even though Cayce does at times give that impression. All bodies are amenable. I'm going to say that's the word. A, M as in Mary, N, E, I'm sorry. A, M as in Mary, E, N as in Nancy, A, B as in boy, L, E, to suggestion through the abnormal mind or through the subconscious mind or through the sympathetic nervous system. Most of us spend our waking day in the conscious mind, but the subconscious mind is still at work even though we might not be attending to it. The goal of the self-healer is to make more fruitful use of the power of the subconscious mind, but this will not in any way turn him into a zombie. Okay, cool. Sorry, I like to try to see how many pages I have because my baby girl. As we go through the various phases of self-healing, we will see that all that is needed to be in touch with the subconscious is really a minimal of time and effort. The point is to know of the existence of the subconscious mind and to be alert to the incredible power that it is. This symbolizes the ability of an entity to break away from the limitations of the conscious mind and enter into the superconscious or higher forces of the subconscious mind. The lesson is to keep yourself in that spiritually oriented state necessary to meet properly the needs of the physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual self. One of the outlets used by the subconscious mind to express itself is that of the dream state. As Cayce says, dreams are a manifestation of the subconscious. Any personal condition before becoming a reality is first dreamed. Cayce put himself into a dream state almost at will, and when we learn this technique later, we too will be able to dream the reality we wish to express, especially as it concerns the well-being and balance of the entity we presently inhabit. The subconscious mind speaks to us in that state in symbolic language and alerts the mind to those dangers that confront the entity. Through symbolic language, the individual is warned regarding mental attitudes. The mind must awaken to the right concepts lest the higher consciousness be paralyzed or distorted. Calling on the mother represents the fear that will arise unless the mood is changed. The lesson is to expand the spiritual awareness rather than deny the inner consciousness already expressed in previous experiences. In short, Cayce was a person who was quite amenable to suggestion, and he knew how to use that talent so as to develop his own healing powers. This is the lesson he teaches those of us who aspire to become self-healers. Edgar Cayce's mind is amenable to suggestion, the same as all other subconscious minds, but in addition thereto, it has the power to interpret to the objective mind of others what it acquires from the subconscious minds of other individuals of the same kind. The subconscious forgets nothing. The conscious mind receives the impressions from without and transfers all thought to the subconscious, where it remains even though the conscious be destroyed as in death. Those of us who are willing to follow the path to self-healing blazed by Edgar Cayce must realize that the second major source of his information, as found in many readings, was in the collective or universal unconscious. In fact, a close study of the readings indicates that it is in this collective unconscious that the individual unconscious or subconscious mind has its origin. What is this collective mind? We already know how important it is simply for the purpose of self-healing, but we would like to know more about it. Certainly we could go and study Jung and discover his understanding and analysis of the collective subconscious, but our teacher is Edgar Cayce, and as usual, he will not disappoint us, having written and referred to this powerhouse of healing quite frequently. Cayce describes the collective or universal unconscious as a vast river of thought flowing through eternity. This source is fed by the collective mental activity of mankind all the way from the beginnings of time. He says often enough that the individual subconscious has its root in the collective and stems from it. He also tells us that this collective unconscious is available to anyone who wants to tap it. All a person has to do is develop his own psychic or spiritual faculties to a level where he can not only draw from this river of thought, but even feed into it. Cayce likes to compare the universal unconscious not only to a river, but to a universal record. He says in his readings that every thought, every action of mankind from the creation has been written into a universal record, sometimes referred to in the readings as God's Book of Remembrance or the Book of Life. It is most often alluded to as the Akashic Records. This is the adjective form of the Sanskrit word akasha and refers to the fundamental etheric substance of the universe, which is said to be electro-spiritual in composition. That's a pretty awesome word. I've never heard that word before. Electro-spiritual. Cayce says that anyone can read the akasha or the universal record and it is that statement that gives hope to those of us who are pursuing the path toward self-healing taught by Cayce. He claims he was only one of many who read the universal record, others being Socrates, Plato, Noah, and Jesus Christ. It is important to realize that the universal record is really a storehouse of mankind's thoughts. For Cayce teaches that every thought we think is a creative act. This being the case, every thought becomes reality in this world of matter. We We who are by nature thinking beings are constantly contributing to the world of thought forms. One could say that our thinking process is like a constant act of creation where we add more and more to our storehouse and that of mankind's. Even when we are just sitting there, dreamy and reflective, we are creating thought forms and patterns, giving them life, energy, and shape. These thought forms go into the universal stockpile, the stream of minds, and as William James puts it, or the collective unconscious, as Jung terms it. And the awesome reality is that each of us as individuals are but a minuscule extension of the great unconscious. Cayce says that we contribute to the record of the universal subconscious as the individual subconscious through time. The sum total of the experiences of each soul is written in the subconscious and also in what we call the Akashic records. What he is saying is that one is related to the other. We cannot have the universal unconscious without the individual subconscious and vice versa. So the two sources of Cayce's information come together, and we can understand now how easy it is to read the unconscious if we are already in touch with our own subconscious and its abilities. Cayce refers to this force as a sixth sense. And I think it's funny because a couple of videos ago, which was a few months ago, I was sick and my nose kept itching, and I kept saying that my grandma used to call that our sixth sense. When someone wants us, needs us, is saying our name, someone's coming, someone's going. It used to be a variety, but it was always centered around someone thinking or needing or wanting us or me specifically, which is cool, I guess. There is an active force within each individual which functions in the manner of a sense when the body physical is in sleep, repose, or rest. We would outline what are the functions of this thing we have chosen to call the sixth sense. This sixth sense activity is the activating force or power of the other self. What other self? That which has been builded by the entity or body or soul throughout all its experiences as a whole in the material and cosmic world. See? It may be termed a faculty of the soul body itself. Cayce does not like to use labels or names. He feels that this limits and experience has proven him right. Many words have been used in attempting to describe what the spiritual entity of a body is and what relation the spirit or soul bears to the active forces within a physical normal body. Some have chosen to call this the cosmic body, that body with which the individual or man is clothed in his advent into the material plane. These are correct, yet by their classification, by calling them names to designate their faculties or functionings, have been limited in many respects. But what relation has the sixth sense, as has been termed in this presented with this soul body, this cosmic consciousness? What relation has it with the faculties and functionings of the normal physical mind, which must be trained? The sixth sense, or must the body be trained in the other functions to the dictates of the sixth sense? Perhaps we should, notwithstanding, seek a further understanding of the sixth sense, since it has such importance to those of us in self-healing. Cayce obliges this, the sixth sense, as it may be termed for consideration here, partakes of the accompanying entity that is ever on guard before the throne of the Creator itself. It is that may be trained or submerged or left to its own initiative until it makes war with the self in some manner or expression, which must show itself in the material world as in disease or disease or temper or any form that has enabled the brain to become so altered as to respond much in the manner that a string vibrates a certain sound according to the way it is strung or played upon. This sense that governs such may be known as the other self of the entity of individual. Hence we find there must be some definite line that may be taken by that other self, and much has been recorded as to certain given effects as it may produce not on the mind, to be sure, for its area of operation is outside those which the mind or the brain centers are ordinarily known to function, but upon the same individual nevertheless. In short, what we are talking about, whether it be the sixth sense, the subconscious, or the universal unconscious, is really the mind of the soul. As Cayce once said, an In consciousness, man seeks his own diversion. In sleep, he seeks the real diversion or the real activity of self. People have often asked Cayce how best increasing one's knowledge of the unconscious soul. Those who would follow the teachings of Cayce on self-healing would also do well to learn more about their own subconscious. We will give practical aids for just that in a later chapter. But right now, let's look at what Cayce says. The knowledge of the subconscious of an entity of the human family is as of one integral force, element, or self in the creation of the human family until the individual makes known to groups, classes, countries, nations the greater study of self. That force will only be magnified. That of the spirit is the spark or portion of the divine that is in every entity, whether complete or evolving to that completeness. The study of subconscious, subliminal, psychic, soul forces is and should be the great study for the human family, for man understands. For man will understand its maker when it understands its relation to its maker, and it will only understand that through itself. Our subconscious mind has a complete and accurate record of our entire life. Hence, studying it and contacting it should be prove fruitful and beneficial to the self. But as self-healers, our efforts must go beyond the self and to mankind. When asked how we can do this, Cayce responded, by developing the mental or physical mind toward the uplift of mankind toward the maker, leaving those things behind that so easily beset the physical body. By training of the mental through the physical forces and the subconscious urge, as we have given in the right or direct way, and lending assistance to the uplift of all. The thought held against an individual directs the mind either of the masses or classes, whether toward good or bad. Thought is reached through the physical forces, and by becoming a part of the physical or conscious mind, either lends strength of subconscious forces or allows the subconscious to direct. Not that the physical mind gives strength, except by allowing the subconscious to direct, and by not building barriers that must then be overcome. That which is to be overcome might as well be met in this plane, for it will have to be met eventually, before we can gain the entrance to the Holy of Holies. This is the manner in which to train or conduct the physical, to lend the assistance to the subconscious forces, to direct and give the help the world or populace needs. Developing the subconscious is in reality developing psychic powers that we possess. Many people, when hearing the word psychic for the first time, become quite unsettled. They imagine all kinds of mumbo jumbo or even the occult. Nothing could be further from the truth. The word psychic, as Edgar Cayce defined it over and over, is nothing more than the soul in action. It has to do with our use of the subconscious, and is simply the understanding of the laws that govern the subconscious and the application of that to our everyday lives, to our actions, to our words and thoughts. The spiritual world and its laws are efficacious, efficacious, and effective. We can sense this in ourselves and almost see it working. And as human beings, it is not the prime concern we have. And as human beings, is not the prime concern we have on earth the soul. Don't we all have a need to understand the laws to which the soul responds while it is here on earth? So equate psychic with spiritual or soul, and you have the meaning that Cayce taught. When asked how one could increase his psychic abilities or his ability to gain the most from the subconscious, Cayce replied, each one who has a soul has a psychic power, but remember, brother, there are no shortcuts to God. You are there, but self must be eliminated. Psychic in its interpretation should be of the soul, not of the discarnate entities. We find such experiences are brought from these innate influences that are signs or omens or directions, hence have nothing to do other than pointing the way. For while one may be influenced by such signs, the very will is that which makes for the choice itself, which is in its essence the gift of the Creator, that the soul might choose to be the soul might choose to be the one with that which is everlasting, which is and can be constructive, born of what may be truth itself, as long-suffering, patience, kindness, brotherly love, not envying, not making for strife, or that which would even make any soul afraid. A person who seeks to take shortcuts in developing his psychic or soul abilities is really wasting his time. Cayce does not want a person to stop living in order to divert himself towards spurious gains. Rather, he would have the self-healer contact his subconscious powers in an effort to further his own spiritual growth. There are no shortcuts in metaphysics, no matter what those say who would force by visualization, by appliance of number or stars or bars or any phase of that astrological aspects. These are urges. Life is lived within self. You live it, you don't profess it, you live it. Know in whom you believe and why, then apply it in your relationship to those with whom you labor. The fact is, it will be to our advantage as self-healers to develop our psychic or soul abilities. If we have the proper understanding of what psychic means, then we know it is a faculty which exists, has existed, and is ours by birthright because we are sons and daughters of God. We have the ability to make association with the Spirit, for God is Spirit, and seek such worship to Him. It is unfortunate that the term psychic has less than favorable definitions today. Even the dictionary says a psychic is one who has abnormal powers, especially the power of automatic writing or of conversing in a trance. We all have psychic forces, and it is Cayce's wish that we develop these. If we look over the definition of psychic in Webster, we will be pleasantly surprised. It gives the following: of or pertaining to the human soul, of or pertaining to the living principle in man, sometimes pertaining to the human soul in its relationship to sense or to appetite in the outer visible world as distinct from the spiritual or the rational faculties. The second definition is of or pertaining to the mind, the mental contrasted within the physical body. Now that we thoroughly understand the fact that psychic is really another word for soul or mind, then we can appreciate how necessary it is for the self-healer to fully decide to develop these powers so that he can undertake to tap his own subconscious and that of the universal consciousness. The self-healer must not allow himself to dismiss the fact that useful information can be obtained through his use of the psychic and his own subconscious. Someone once asked Cayce why people put down the subconscious and the psychic, and he responded, lack of understanding of the law governing so-called psychic powers is behind this. Lack of consciousness being brought to the individual of the potential powers which are manifested in and through the psychic or occult forces. Much of this misunderstanding is caused by the lack of proper use of the knowledge obtained through such sources, for the incorrect use of such knowledge may and would bring destructive elements. The only real life is that which in the material or physical plane is called psychic. Those who ridicule such forces are to be pitied rather than condemned, for they must eventually reach that condition, adversity, frustrations, etc., wherein the soul awakens to the elements necessary for the developing. For without the psychic force in the world, the physical world would be in that condition of hit or miss, or as a ship without a rudder or pilot. For that element which is the guiding force in each and every condition in the spirit or soul of that condition, which is the psychic or occult force. Thus we know from the teachings of Cayce that there is a definite faculty within our bodies which we may call psychic powers. This faculty, as we saw, pertains to the soul and also to something physical. Hence the great difference in the French and in the Grecian definition of psychic. To the French, it means animal or carnal, while the Grecian meaning is of the soul life. How are we going to use this power? Both definitions are true since they emphasize the roots and the spirit of man. What makes the psychic meaningful, however, is purpose. Surely all depends on purpose. It is up to the entity then in its experience, in its association with others, in its dealing with opportunity with others, with conditions and circumstances, to use all in a constructive way and manner. And when there are those periods when disturbance and disappointments come to have in the spiritual ideals, the mental purposes, that which will keep the body from seeking only gratifying a physical appetite. The self-healer needs an awakening and rising to the awareness of the powers that he possesses. He knows now that he has psychic power and that this must be developed so as to tap the subconscious, But how must he think, study, and act to acquire this awakening? Study to show it thyself approved unto him, rightly dividing the words of truth, keeping self unspotted from the world, avoiding the appearance of evil. For as is given, those who would seek God must believe that he is, and a rewarder of those who would seek him. That is, as the Creator has that oneness with the individual to make that oneness with him. Sorry, I thought I heard something. As is given in the condition as manifest through those who would seek the oneness with him, as is given in the conditions as manifest through those who would seek the oneness with God, for only those who have approached sufficient to make the mind of the soul, the mind of the spiritual, one with him, may understand or gather that necessary to approach that understanding. Okay, I'm sorry. The proper development of our subconscious through the development of our psychic or soul abilities is responsibility incumbent upon the self-healer. Thus, he will be able to see and appreciate the beautiful, the pure, and the lovely in whatever it is he contacts. Everything within the scope of what affects our body, mind, and heart will help us grow and develop in us the abilities to be in closer attunement with the infinite. Each will find a variation according to the application and the abilities of each to become less and less controlled by personality, and the more and more able to shut away the material consciousness, or the mind portion that is of the material propagated or implied by what is termed the five senses. The more and more of each is impelled by that which is intuitive, or the relying upon the soul force within, the greater, the farther, the deeper, the broader, the more constructive may be the result. More and more then turn to those experiments that are not only helpful, but they give hope to others, that make for the activity of the fruits of the Spirit. Make haste slowly. Wait on the Lord, not making for a show and activity of any kind that would be self-glorification, self-exaltation, but rather that which is hopeful for others. What Cayce is telling all self-healers is that when we use the powers within us to serve the creative force in God, then we are using them correctly. If they are used for our own selfish purposes, they are being abused. Then we become even as the son of perdition. We must be ready when called upon. We do not know when we will have to make use of our self-healing powers. If we are not ready, if we are not making our preparations, it will only be a matter of time before we must pay the penalty. When asked if a person should cultivate his psychic abilities, Cayce answered, first, as in those things which we have given regarding meditation, study to know what to thy mind is dedicating of self's abilities in every way and manner in which they may express themselves to the spiritual forces. Study to know the manner in which the body, the mind may be purified or may be consecrated, that there may be greater expression, and we will find that these developments will come naturally of themselves. In their expression, as we find, they will come rather as visions in the ministering to, the listening to the needs and the activities of others. As to what individual advice the readings give on the use of psychic abilities, Cayce says, necessity for the entity to determine and satisfy its own consciousness as to the questions, for what purpose would I enter into active conscious service for my fellow man? Is it that self may be exalted? Is it that self may be abused, that there may be the glory of God manifested among the children of men? What witness does such an entity bear? That the Christ has thee in the heeds done in the body that are the fruits of the Spirit of truth? Or is it the indulgence into that which satisfies a longing for self-glory? These questions must be answered, and may be answered in this. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman not ashamed, rightly dividing the words of truth, and not keeping self in body and in mind unspotted from the world. These are the determining factors then as to what, as to how, as to when, and in what way one may develop his or her psychic abilities. Most of the people who wanted to learn self-healing came to Cayce for advice on the use of their psychic powers, kept asking him the same questions. They really came down to this one question: how can I have more, and how can I be sure? Let us examine 4 sample questions that recur frequently in the readings. Number 1, would it be wise for me to develop what psychic abilities I seem to have now, so that these would be under control and called upon at will for aid to others? Cayce's response: be decidedly well. For the body, the mind is well fitted as a channel, so that by entering into meditation, there may come those influences from its own abilities as a seeress, as a prophetess, as a high priestess, and that experience to know the needs of the individuals as they seek. Credit the power to the divine as it manifests through self, for it is that self-expression that is needed in the preparation and in the ministering of same to the needs of others. Will this develop? Number 2, will this develop normally and naturally, or should there be a deliberate attempt? Cayce's response: as it were, expose self to its development, not by force, but by entering into meditation, allowing the influence of the generative force through the glandular system to be raised to the various centers, first for the purifying of self, then for the obtaining of that necessary through symbol, sign, or vision to be accomplished for individual seeking. Sorry. Number 3, is there any evidence that I have or could develop super normal powers? Cayce responds: this depends upon the qualifications or as to what is termed supernormal powers. There is within every soul the ability to accomplish any influence that has been or may be accomplished in the earth. If the development of the psychic abilities is meant here, these might be developed dependent upon what the entity asks as its ideal or as his guide. There is one way, but there are many paths. Explain what the Number 4, explain what the divide between the soul and spiritual forces is, how manifest, and how we may study self to gain the approach to the divide. My elderly cat came between the camera stand. Please don't knock it, fool. Yes, baby, I see you, Phoebe. Cayce's response: this is of the spiritual entity in its entirety. The superconscious is the divide, that oneness lying between the soul and the spirit force within the spiritual entity, not of the earth forces at all, only awakened with the spiritual indwelling and acquired individually. The self-healer knows now that it is his subconscious mind that he must develop in order to achieve effectiveness in this chosen work. He also knows now that the ability to touch the subconscious of the self and the universal subconscious is what is known as psychic or soul power. But Cayce can never stress enough that the true source of all the self-healer's power is the divine. It is this spirit that must direct the self-healer in his growth and development of true soul power. As has been given, there are the influences from without and the influences from within. Rather has the promise been, I will be thy God, and ye shall be my people. My spirit shall bear witness with thy spirit, thy soul, that ye be the children of God. Those influences that are about thee, those influences that are about thee are good, but rather ever let that which thou would gain through thy writing be inspired by the best in self as magnified through Christ than any entity or spirit or soul. While these seek for expression ever, they be seekers as thyself. As he gave, if the blind lead, the blind both shall fall into the ditch. Be led then rather by that which comes from thine own soul, which thou meetest in the temple of thy body, thy God in thee. And if he uses other influences, he will direct same. Be not then directed save by the spirit of the Christ that is thy heritage. Faint not, be not overcome. Be used that thou hast begun to develop in thyself, letting thy master, thy God, be thy director ever. Woe is he that would hearken to the voice that would turn these aside. For as the prophet of old has said, if even an angel of light proclaims other than that which the Savior has given, have none of it. In thy meditations then much hast thou grown in thy closeness with him. I'm so sorry. It's that old-timey talk that it always makes me stumble. Let it be prompted by the Spirit of the Christ, by thine own spirit. Association with the Master then is for Cayce what we could call psychic power. What the self-healer must guard against is the loss of any association with his creator. He must not think so much about himself and the supplying of his physical needs, so that all he does is gratifying his own desires, forgetting the association of his soul with its maker. Alrighty. Thank you so much for joining me on chapter 10. Next time we're going to read chapter 11. I just want to say this really quickly. When they asked about superpowers, I know this is going to be, it's very controversial, and that when I've said this to people, people think whatever they want to think. Years ago, I used to do acid. And I used to do a lot of acid, unfortunately. But there was one trip that I had where I actually was looking at a superhero movie, and I was like, yo, superheroes are real. Supervillains too, if we're gonna play that role too, but however, superpowers exist. And I keep forgetting, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the screen. I need to look at the camera because on my old phone, the camera used to be the other way. However, I apologize, I'm looking at the camera. Superpowers exist, and my thinking was, there's no way any of these characters that exist now was just a figment of someone's imagination. Someone saw them. Someone came across somebody that had the ability to fly. Someone came across someone with the ability of super strength, super speed. I wholeheartedly, even now, and I haven't done acid in, it has been 5 years. I want to say 5 years. And I still wholeheartedly believe that there are just certain things in this world that everyone has to admit. I don't care if you're religious. I don't care if you're atheist. I don't care if you believe in this, that, and the third. There is this feeling that there is more. That there is more out there than what we're being shown, what we're being told, what we even feel. Like, we feel like there's just more out there. And I believe in superheroes. I'm not going to sit there and say that a caped superhero is real. I will say that there is somebody out there in this plane of existence that can create fire with their hands, that can create that. I'll just say that the Avatar, the cartoon, is real, that DC Comics is real, that Marvel characters are real. There is just something that ever since that trip, I can't explain it. Just really quickly, one more super short story. When I was doing acid, I thought about taking DMT. Never took it, but there was a guy on YouTube that I looked at. Now it's crazy because I tried to look him up a few months ago, actually, and couldn't find him. I bet YouTube buried him. However, he took DMT on camera, and he sat in his kitchen, fell in between the cabinet. Not fell, but he slid down in between the cabinets and sat on the floor. And you see this man just like crying. He's just like, oh my God, what? Oh my, and he, after he tripped, he came back and said, I met these beings and they told me that I could leave with them and that I didn't have to stay here with them. I could go with them right now and I could choose a different life and still be me. And that stuck with me so much, just because and I know Marvel fans are gonna come after me. There's a group of Marvel characters, and please, someone that does watch Marvel, put that in the comment section what their names is. It's not the Celestials. It's not is it the Watchers? However, when he said that, it made me think of them, because they're just this, they're a group of entities that are watching over everything. And I'm just like, I personally believe in aliens. I've always said it, and I will always say it. I'm a huge conspiracy theorist. Not to every single conspiracy, but to a good hunk of them. And I have those feelings that there's just more out there. I definitely do. I'm gonna stop rambling before I lose some subscribers with acid and DMT and aliens. I don't want to lose no subscribers over that. I want to just stick with the spiritual books that I'm reading. But please, just be safe, guys. It is crazy out there. Make the decisions that are best for you. Make decisions that inspire you. Make a decision to get out of a situation that you're not comfortable with. I love you guys. Take care of yourselves. Stay healthy. Peace.